up, comic book people of the world? It is Wednesday, that means it's comic book day. Let me show you what I got. First up is Ghostbusters 101, issue number 4. We have an interdimensional breach. The original Ghostbusters are teaming up with the new reimagined Ghostbusters, of which I know a lot of people out there are not fans of. But this comic book series is doing a crossover with the two of them really well. I'm personally liking this story. I'm liking the interaction between the several different characters whose personalities have some similarities, but at the same time are vastly different. There's also references to other universes taking place, including Caddyshack, which is somewhat of an indirect reference, but still I kind of like that whole idea that that could be happening with these characters who the actors who played them in movies may be existing in other universes too. Flash, issue number 25, Running Scared Part 1. Barry has followed Reverse Flash into the future because he's kidnapped Iris West. We get somewhat of a new origin story for Eobard Thawne. It's somewhat like the original one, but it does have a few different turns to it. And we find out the very simplistic reason as to why he hates the Flash so much. Poor Barry, he really gets his ass handed to him in this issue. But it's only the first part, so you know a lot more is about to happen, especially after the big reveal on the final page. Wonder Woman issue number 25. Diana had to give up her magic lasso in the previous storyline in order to contain the Sons of Ares, and the Justice League immediately notices this. I'm kind of happy that we get to see a brief little interaction between her and some of the other superheroes, and we have more of a romantic bond with Steve Trevor. But what I'm really ecstatic about is that Diana is trying to communicate with her patron gods, and we actually get a response. This was an oversized issue, and I think it was really great. It's also a great jumping on point for anyone who may not be caught up with Wonder Woman. Edge of Venomverse issue number 1. This is starring the all-new Wolverine, which happens to be X-23. I stayed away from spoilers in this storyline, and I didn't realize that this was going to be taking place in multiple different dimensions. In this case, X-23, her origin is slightly altered, where she bonds with a Venom symbiote. And this is somewhat of an origin story where she's escaping her cloning facility, then later bonding with some other runaways, but with the symbiote attached to her as well. This is only the first issue, and as you can probably guess, there's going to be a lot of other characters who also bonded with symbiotes in their own respective universes. So I expect a huge team up in the works. Action Comics number 982, Revenge Part 4. It's basically the entire Revenge Squad against Superman. And unfortunately, Superman has been blinded from the previous issue. So Superman versus all of these villains, it doesn't look quite too well. Except on the final page, we get a little glimmer of hope. I'm sorry, did I say little? I meant huge glimmer of hope, because that looks like it's going to be totally badass. Batman Beyond issue number 9, Rise of the Demon Part 4. Terry McGinnis Batman versus Damian Wayne, who happens to be the new Ra's al Ghul. This issue goes into the explanation as to why Damian returned back to his grandfather's fold. And we get a great battle between Damian and Terry. I personally like Damian being a villain much more than being a hero. I'm curious as to whether or not he's going to be a reoccurring villain later on down the line, or maybe this is just a one-time story where he's appearing and maybe they're going to close off his story at the end. But at this point, everything is still somewhat in the air. Jim and the Holograms Infinite Part 1. Some people really like the Jim and the Holograms comic book. Some people hate it altogether. I kind of go back and forth depending on the artist. Some artists have some great skill sets, while some of the others, not quite a huge fan of them. And I know I should also base it on the story, but I feel like it should be equal. Good story and good art. That's just my personal preference. In this issue, the rivalry between Jim and the Holograms and the Misfits is still very much there. However, now we're going into a much more sci-fi realm. Both bands are traveling through interdimensional portals going to different universes, which I've read already online. Some people are not happy with this idea, but personally, I'm curious to see where it's going to be heading. Finally, the last comic book I read this week was Clue issue number 1. Yes, this is based on the board game. It's not really based on the 1980s movie, which I love that movie to death, but this is taking a completely different story. Right at the beginning, we're shown the 11 characters. It should be the main focus for this story, including the narrator, who happens to be the butler, Upton. He breaks the fourth wall and speaks directly to the reader several times throughout the story. Sometimes I'm a fan of this, sometimes I'm not. I'll give it another couple issues. Right now, I'm a bit on the fence about that. But all of the elements from Clue, plus a few extra, are part of this first issue. We have a murder taking place, which happens to be Mr. Body, and apparently each issue does have clues as to who the murderer or murderers are. The little bit I've read about this series online is that it will be taking a few different twists and turns that the reader may not be expecting. Like at the end of this first issue, there was something that happened that did take me a bit by surprise. This issue is the only comic book that I read twice, just so I could see if I missed any clues here and there, which I didn't see anything. I'm sure when everything's revealed at the end, I'll go back and I'll look at everything and I'll be like, wow, how did I miss that? But that's my comic load for this week. What did you guys get? Leave comments down below and let me know. Anyways, thank you guys for watching this video. If you haven't done it yet, subscribe to my channel. Also, if you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Check out my Patreon site, check out my website, check out all my other social media sites out there. there, and hopefully I'll join you guys in another video very soon. Peace, love, namaste, and I'll see you guys later. Peace. Spoiler for Action Comics number 982. The only character that was missing at the end of that issue was Superboy. Con-El Superboy, Connor Kent Superboy. I feel like he could be written in just somewhere in the back with the other super people.